down. I got them nights that don't play around. Hit up the bishop to pray for this.
Hello, my name is Osiris, and today on the Culture Report, we're looking at Season 1 of Telltale's The Walking Dead. We meet Lee in the back of a cop car on his way to prison for murder. That image almost speaks for itself. The story plays coy for a bit before confirming 100% that yes, this black man is also a murderer, and yes, you are following his story for all of these chapters. Season 1 follows Lee Everett and a young girl named Clementine as they attempt to survive the zombie or walker outbreak, as they're called in Robert Kirkman's universe. It's hard to explain just how popular The Walking Dead was as a franchise during the early to mid 2000s. This game is a product of that time period for sure. Telltale's The Walking Dead is an episodic decision game with very light puzzle elements. Telltale, the developer, would achieve extreme success and popularity after this first licensed collaboration, and they follow up with many more attempts to replicate this successful formula across multiple seasons of not just The Walking Dead, but other franchise games as well. Something to note about this game is the fact that as the player, you are given many moments where you choose what Lee says and what choices he makes. But ultimately, the game has a set narrative and there are certain story beats that will happen no matter what. What changes mostly is how Lee is perceived by other characters in the story. I chose to play Lee as an honest, teen dad-like figure with regrets because I felt like this playstyle most fit his character at this point in the story. During episode 1, the cop car crashes as the outbreak worsens, and Lee escapes when the cop dies in the crash.
If I do say so. This other time.
Zombies appear, and Lee runs away, wounded. He finds shelter in a nearby home, and here's where we meet Clementine for the first time. She's been hiding alone because her parents were away, and the babysitter is dead. After Lee deals with the zombie babysitter, he and Clementine team up. Clem's resourceful, but because she's only 8, Lee is effectively saving her life here. They end up at a farm owned by a man named Herschel, and I think he's the one from the comics, but none of the rest of his family is there, so I'm not sure. While at the farm, Lee and Clem meet Kenny, his wife Katja, and their son Duck. Kenny and his family are important members of Lee's core group in Season 1. This is the meta reason why I always have Lee choose to save Duck on Herschel's farm. It makes Kenny's loyalty make more sense later and forms the basis of their relationship for the rest of the series. After leaving or being tossed off of Herschel's farm,
Get out. Get the fuck out of here!
Lee and Kenny's group end up trapped in Macon. Lee's from Macon, and we learn that once we see a drugstore named Everett's. Inside this drugstore is where we meet the rest of Lee's core group for the rest of Season 1. There's ex-military Lily and her dad Larry, Carly the reporter, and Doug, who I think is her cameraman. Glenn from the comics is here too, but he's more of a glorified cameo. Once Lee, Clem, Kenny, Katja, and Duck all make it into the drugstore, Larry and Lily start raising hell because they think Duck was bit as the group entered town.
Son of a bitch. One of them is bitten.
He wasn't bitten.
Hell, he wasn't. We have to end this now.
Over my dead body.
We'll dig one hole.
No, I'm cleaning him up. There's no bite.
A big argument breaks out between what would eventually become Lily's side of the group and Kenny's side of the group. This first disagreement, I was on Kenny's side, but I later found myself agreeing with Lily a lot more. She was actually right about a lot of stuff at first. And some of what ends up happening to her later is pretty fucked up, in my opinion. There's a final, more meta reason why I played it this way, but I'll speak on that later. So while in the drugstore, Lee gets closure about his parents and his brother dying. We also learn that Carly and Larry know Lee is a convicted murderer. Carly doesn't really care, but Larry uses this knowledge to treat Lee like garbage for a while. I also chose to have Lee tell Clem that he was in trouble with the law, but she was sweet about it. Her and Lee's bond is the heart of the story, and it's great. Episode 1 ends when Larry has a mini heart attack and the drugstore is overrun while we're getting his meds. Everything descends into chaos, and both Carly and Doug end up in trouble. I saved Carly because she's a great shot. Sorry, Doug. Episode 2 starts months later in a nearby motor inn the group cleared and are trying to reinforce. While hunting, Lee and new member Mark come across 2 teens and their teacher. The teacher and one of the teens end up dying, but the surviving teenager named Ben joins the group. Another argument breaks out about Ben. Ken and Lily apparently have been having constant clashes these past months. Larry's still a jerk, but Clem and Duck are still adorable. Katja, Kenny's wife, is a vet, so she's also the group's medic and a voice of reason. Hunger is making the group pretty desperate, so when 2 sketchy guys come by trying to trade food for gas and saying they have a farm, the group goes pretty eagerly. The family farm turns out to be a word that rhymes with animal house. The Animal House family traps the group and tries to have them over for dinner. Mark is killed and Larry has a heart attack while everybody is locked up in a freezer together. Now Larry's a big guy, so Kenny decides he doesn't want to risk being locked in a freezer with him just in case he turns. Told Lee to help Lily do CPR on Larry, but while that was happening, Kenny goes and drops a salt lick on his head, killing him. I honestly think this event was the beginning of Lily's mental decline, but we will see more of that in the next episode. Kenny and Lee escape from the locker, free and rescue the rest of the group. And kill the farm family. You can let them live, but I chose not to. The zombies eventually overrun the farm at the end of the episode anyway. A Deus Ex station wagon appears abandoned and full of food at the very end of the episode. No matter what option you choose, the group steals this food. This will stupidly be very important to the end of this season. Episode 3 starts with the group starving again, and the arguing has worsened. Kenny has fixed up an RV and wants to take his family and the rest of the group on the road. Lily wants to stay in the motor inn, which has been having bandit problems. The vague bandit faction appeared last episode, but they actually matter in this one. Lily realizes someone from the group has been stealing supplies. Right when Lee finds proof supplies are being stolen, the bandits stage an attack in force, claiming they had a deal and we fucked up. Our group fights back, but zombies start overrunning the motor inn as well, so everyone hops in Kenny's RV and rides away, even Lily. As we're escaping, another argument breaks out in the RV about who cut a deal with the bandits, and Lily lasers in on either Ben or Carly as the guilty parties. Kenny hits a walker hard and has to pull over, but when this happens, the argument boils over for good, and Carly puts Lily in check just for doing way too much.
I got him. Please, let's just get back in
That's
the
not
RV.
happening. You think you're some tough bitch, don't you? Like nothing can hurt you. But you're just a scared little girl. Get the fuck over it. Take a page from Lee's book and try helping somebody for once.
Shout out to Carly. She was a real one since episode 1, and I think she kind of had a crush on my guy Lee, but that's another conversation. In response to being told to chill the fuck out, Lily pulls out a pistol and executes Carly on the spot. God damn.
Now, what the fuck's the problem?
She looks remorseful and kind of shocked right after it happens, but I still had Lee leave her ass on the side of the road. The mood's already somber as hell when Kenny and Kat call Lee to the front and they tell him that Duck got bit during the escape from the motor inn. After driving for a little bit, the road is blocked by a train, so Kenny and Lee get out and get it working, but then they decide to just take the train to Savannah instead. A cool homeless guy living in the train joins the group and we all ride out together. 2 more major events cap off this already pretty sad chapter. Catcher tells Lee that Duck's time is up and he's too sick and might turn, so Kenny needs to stop the train. I managed to talk him down without a fist fight, which isn't always possible, and I tell Lee to help Duck for them. Catcher thanks Lee deeply, and her and Kenny walk off into the woods for a final moment with their son. While reassuring Clementine about all this, a gunshot goes off.
But how? He's bitten.
By making sure he doesn't come back.
Oh.
Look, Clem, things are... What the?
No!
Lee runs over, and Catcher has taken another way out right in front of Kenny. Lee then helps Duck for a totally shattered Kenny, who just couldn't do it. The second and final event for this episode is the group meeting Krista and Omid, who end up joining us on our way to Savannah. I like them. Krista's serious and Omid's a joker. The episode then ends with Lee cutting Clem's hair and showing her how to shoot on Chuck's advice. A funny moment happens between Lee and Clem where Lee is pretty reluctant to cut off her afro puffs, which was pretty funny.
Do you know how to do this?
Nope, no idea. I'm not much of a stylist, you know.
In episode 4, the new and final version of the core group is Lee and Clementine, a broken Kenny, nervous and guilty Ben, homeless Chuck, and then Krista and Omid. While walking through Savannah, the group gets split up from Chuck, who later ends up dying because he saved Clementine during a surprise walker attack, even though Ben ran away. And I definitely was judging him for this. The group manages to clear and hide in a nearby house, and Kenny says they should check out the marina for boats. When they get there, all the boats are destroyed or already parted out. They also meet Molly, who admits to ringing the bells earlier as her way of moving around safely. She also tells them about Crawford, the Savannah natives who basically went completely amoral to survive the apocalypse. Clem appears too because she snuck out. Lee gets split from Molly, Kenny, and Clementine due to another zombie attack, and he ends up in the sewer. He runs into a group of cancer survivors who fled from Crawford and hid underground. They're led by a doctor named Vernon who helps Lee get back to his group through the sewers. When Lee and Vernon make it back to the core group, Clem has found them a boat miraculously. Kenny says it only needs gas and a battery, so the group decide to sneak into Crawford and steal some of those items, as well as some medicine for Omid and Vernon, who is going to treat him. When the group reaches Crawford, they realize everybody's already dead and the place is infested with zombies. They still manage to grab all the supplies, but a lady Vernon brought along ends up eating. Everybody makes it back, and Kenny starts fixing up the boat. But while we wait, Clem asks Lee if they will have time to still look for her parents. I didn't want to lie, and by this point in the story, the player can be pretty sure that they are already dead. So I say we might not have time, and Clem is heartbroken. Lee dozes off and wakes up to Clementine missing. She's nowhere in the house, and he finds her walkie-talkie abandoned outside. And when we reach to grab it, Lee gets bit by a walker that was hidden on the street. Now, before we go through the final episode for this season, let's talk about Clementine's walkie and her hat. Clem first speaks to Lee through her walkie-talkie, and during the previous episodes, she would imagine talking to her parents through it as a way to cope with her trauma. In episode 3, Lee realizes that a stranger has been responding to Clem through her walkie, and the stranger starts stalking the group as soon as they reach Savannah for reasons that we're about to talk about. Now, in my opinion, Clem's hat seems to represent her innocence for this season. She almost loses the hat a couple of times, but Lee always finds it and brings it back to her. Episode 5 starts with the group deciding to track down the stalker and save Clem. I got everybody except Kenny to come along with me on the search. When the bite starts to make Lee pass out, there's an option to cut his arm off to stop the bite's infection. Now, on my first playthrough ever, I definitely cut my guy Lee's arm off because I wanted this man to make it. But knowing what I know now, I let him keep his arm for an R-farm moment later. So the group gets back to the safe house, and it turns out that the cancer survivors came back first, stole the boat, and locked Kenny's ass in the shed. He's fine, but pissed about the boat. This man Kenny was always pissed, especially at Ben, who confessed last episode about snaking the motor in and basically getting Duck and Katya killed. When the Savannah safe house gets overran by zombies out of nowhere, the group runs to the rooftops. While crossing one, Ben falls and ends up impaled on the ground below, but still alive. Lee and Kenny climb down into the alley to help him, but realize that Ben's a goner. Zombies start to flood the alley, so Kenny pushes Lee to safety. A single gunshot silences Ben as the zombies overwhelm the two off screen.
Back, you sons of bitches! Yeah! Oh, fuck! Kenny!
Lee climbs back up to the rooftops. Of the core group, the only people left are Krista and Omi, since Molly bailed a long time ago and everybody else is dead. Krista and Omi still push forward with Lee to try to find Clem, but they end up separated. Lee tells them that he'll go alone, but they should just wait for him by the trains outside of town. Lee then climbs down from the rooftops and into the streets. The sun's going down and there's zombies everywhere. Earlier, Clem was able to get Lee a message on the walkie-talkies about where she is, so we start walking towards that location. This whole episode, Lee's been looking sicker and more zombified. He mentions that the arm where he was bitten has gone almost completely numb. So this legend grabs a broken shard of glass in one hand, pulls his cleaver out in his main hand, and walks every zombie down between him, the crazy stalker guy, and Clementine. Strangely, a lot of the zombies don't even seem to attack Lee anymore. Also strange, the Deus Ex station wagon from the end of episode 2 is parked outside of the building where Clem says she is. Real quick, let's talk about it. This last antagonist guy is stupid. He kidnapped Clem because the group stole his food back in episode 2. Even if Lee and Clementine say no and never agreed to it, this guy still picks apart all the choices you made as a player and then decides that you and Lee are evil and he should be Clem's dad now. Even though he lost his first son during a botched hunting trip, then let his wife and daughter run off and die shortly after that. And if you weren't positive he was crazy before, he's got his dead wife's head in a bag and he talks to it. So yeah, this guy sucks. And when you realize this crappy villain basically got Lee railroaded into being bit, it stings that much more. So in that last sequence dealing with him, I got a little pissed because I already knew what was coming from my guy. I was picking the wrong options, he was kicking my ass, so Clementine had to bail me out and bust a cap in his ass.
Die!
Her and Lee's reunion is brief but sweet, and Lee gives Clem her hat one last time. When we go to leave, a zombie appears but totally ignores Lee, who hesitates for a second, then kills it. He realizes he's covered in zombie guts and does the same to Clem. They slowly walk outside into a horde of zombies but are left alone. Lee is very weak, and leans on Clem as they walk. Clem finally sees her parents, but they're zombies, and you can just watch her little heart shatter. She still had hope they were alive, but then Lee loses consciousness and the screen goes black. This moment is scary as hell, but you come to in a small garage with Clem begging you/Lee to wake up. He does, but he can barely move, barely crawl. Clem props him up on a wall, and you realize she pulled him inside all by herself. She locked the garage, but you can see Lee panic a little bit. There's already a zombie in the garage office, and he knows he's about to die and turn 2. Right here is where the game always gets me. Lee coaches Clem into getting into the office for the keys and the gun that's on the zombie, but it gets free and attacks her. Lee is way too weak to help and gets knocked out for a second, but slides Clem a bat and she kills the zombie. At this point, I'm looking like Matthew McConaughey from Interstellar as I'm telling Clem that Lee can't be a zombie. She raises the gun, you hear the shot, the screen goes black, and the credits roll. I love this game's writing as a whole, but the relationship between Lee and Clem is so well written, and by the end, I always want this man to make it and keep raising Clem even though I know he can't. His shadow looms large through the rest of the story, even as she gets older and more badass in her own right. Neither character ever shies away from their blackness, and it's constantly referenced in the story because everyone always assumed that Lee is Clem's dad. I never lie about it in game, but nobody cared really. There's a lot of choices like that actually. The antagonists range from annoying and Larry to tragic and Lily to legitimately creepy like the Animal House family. The last guy was pretty stupid, but we talked about that. Kenny wasn't necessarily an antagonist here, more of a foil for Lee. I actually like Kenny as a character, despite his Florida man, you're urban, right? tendencies. His hothead, jackass characterization bounces off of a chilled out Lee really well. So where does Telltale's The Walking Dead score on the representation grading scale? Well, Lee and later Clementine are two of the most iconic black leading characters of all time. This game won dozens of Game of the Year awards off of a pretty unrefined gaming formula purely on storytelling and characterization alone. This game is an A.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Landed right on top of us.
I just really had a great time with this experience, man. I recommend it 100% for anybody, especially if you love a good story. But what do you guys think? Comment below, and thanks for watching.
Lay him down, I got them nights that don't play around. Hit up the bishop to pray for the sound. We playing chess, we taking the crown. Come to your castle, we breaking it down.